We go back in time. We see a girl being attacked by someone, and when she tries to push him away and slaps him, she finds that the skin on his face has peeled off, so the girl realizes that this person is one of the sorcerers. The sorcerer pulls out a knife and says to her, "I will take the skin of your face so I can benefit from it." Then he grabs her hand to take the skin of her face, and the girl keeps screaming. But suddenly, Zagan appears and grabs him by the head, then lifts him into the air and says to him, "Do you not know that the place where you are doing all of this belongs to someone? I wanted to sleep, but I could not because of you." The sorcerer feels that he has truly fallen into trouble, so he says to him, "We are both sorcerers. Do not do this to me. I will share my research with you if you let me go." Zagan says to him, "I do not need someone like you." With a single strike from Zagan, he finishes him off completely and blood flies everywhere. When the girl sees what happened, she cannot believe what she saw. Then she loses consciousness. Zagan says, "I overdid it a little, and I did not pay attention to the girl. When she wakes up now, she will be traumatized." Zagan casts a spell that restores everything to the way it was. He erases what happened from the girl's memory, then notices that she is wearing the symbol of the church, so he understands that she is one of the enemies of sorcerers. He says, "I will leave her on the road to any town, and if anyone finds her, they will help her." Zagan uses teleportation magic, but suddenly, interference disrupts his magic. Zagan says, "I placed protective barriers everywhere. Not just any sorcerer can do this." Suddenly, a person named Barbatos appears. Zagan says to him, "I would be happy if you stayed away from me." Barbatos says to him, "Did I interrupt you while you were doing something?" Zagan says to him, "No. Just someone who was making noise in the place, and I already finished him off." Barbatos says to him, "Yes, the lives of other people are not important because we only use them as fuel for us." Then he approaches the girl and says, "She has a large amount of mana. Are you going to sacrifice her?" Zagan says to him, "No, I will not do that." Then he uses teleportation magic and moves her away from the place. Barbados gets annoyed and says to him, "If you were not going to use her, I would have taken her." Zagan says to him, "I want to go sleep." Barbados follows him and calls out to him saying, "I have important news for you. Do you know Marcosius? One of the demon lords has died." Zagan is shocked the moment he hears that, and we learn that these demon lords possess an enormous amount of mana. They also hold authority that allows them to do whatever they want with sorcerers who are beneath them. Among the 13 demon lords was Marcosius, and he died after living for 1,000 years. Barbados says, "An auction will be held for Marcosius' possessions." The two of them go to the city. Zagan says to him, "Did you bring me with you so you could borrow money from me? But be careful, because I can buy those things instead of you." Barbados says to him, "No, I want you to help me." But suddenly a guard passes beside them and runs toward his commander. Zagan senses that something is going on, so he says to Barbados, "What is happening?" He answers, "There are kidnappings happening because of sorcerers who abduct girls to conduct experiments on them." Zagan says to him, "Then this is serious, and it will cause problems with the church." Then he thinks and says, "They are doing this in order to summon something important." They reach the place where the auction is being held. Barbatos tells Zagan that there are famous people in the place, such as Kimaris, the Black Blade, Grimori, the Witch, and Valifor. These are powerful people, and they are competing for the position of the 13th Demon Lord, and I am competing with them too. Zagan says to him, "And who decides whether you become one of the Demon Lords?" Barbados says to him, "The 12 rulers are the ones who decide that." After that, a slave who once belonged to a Demon Lord is presented at the auction. When Zagan sees her, he is shocked. Then he stands up and offers a huge amount of money to buy her. Barbados is surprised by what he is doing and says to him, "What are you going to do with her?" Zagan goes down to the girl and grabs the collar that suppresses her mana. Then he asks the person standing there, "Why was this collar placed around her neck?" He answers, "So she will not run away from you." Then we return to the present time, and Zagan is unable to answer her after she asked him how she is going to die. The elf says to him, "If you are not going to kill me, then what can you do to me?" Zagan looks at the castle and finds inside it the torture tools belonging to the person who was there before him in that castle. He says, "I forgot to remove them." Then Zagan introduces himself to her and tells her that he is not interested in torture. The elf introduces herself to him and says, "My name is Nephilia." Zagan says to her, "And what is your family name?" Nephilia says, "I do not have a family name because I was born as a cursed child." Zagan has fallen in love with this girl, but he does not know how he is supposed to live with her. So he says to her, "Come with me so you can choose a place to stay." Nephilia says to him, "Is this the place where you will kill me?" He says to her, "Did I not tell you that I will not kill you?" Zagan understands why she says that. It is because she was kidnapped and sold as a slave, so that many experiments could be performed on her. And Zagan has gone through the same experience, because he never knew who his parents were. Zagan says to her, "I bought you because I want you to live with me." Then he takes her and goes up with her to the second floor to bring her to her room. But the moment they reach the room and Zagan opens its door, he is shocked to find that it is an execution room. He closes the door quickly. Then he uses magic and hides everything inside the room, causing a massive explosion. Nephilia tells him that she wants to stay in this room because he is the one who chose it for her. The next day, Zagan brings her food and sits down to eat with her. Nephilia says to him, "Are you going to eat from the same food I am eating?" Zagan says to her, "Yes, and what is the problem?" Nephilia says to him, "Because this food is simple, and it is not suitable for you to eat it." Zagan says to her, "Is this food simple?" Then he thinks and says, "Was I not supposed to bring her this food? I have been eating this food my whole life." Then he asks himself, "So, what do ordinary people eat?" Nephilia says to him, "Don't you want me to prepare a meal that you would like?" Zagan is surprised the moment he hears that and asks her, "Can you actually cook?" Nephilia replies, "Yes." He says to her, "Then come on, let's go to the city and buy a few things." The two of them head toward a carriage to ride it, but then he remembers that he spent all the money he had to buy Nephilia, so he says to her, "What do you think about walking instead?" Then he takes her with him, and the two of them continue on foot. As they walk, Zagan thinks to himself, "I have to find a way to make money. Should I sell the torture equipment that's in the castle? But I don't have enough money to hire someone to transport it. Should I have robbed the carriage owner? No. If Nephilia had seen me doing that, she would have been upset." And so, Zagan keeps thinking of any possible way to earn money. But suddenly, they hear someone screaming. He looks over and sees the carriage owner being attacked by bandits. Nephilia says to him, "Aren't you going to do something?" He replies, "They're not sorcerers. They're just bandits." Then he notices that Nephilia is frightened, and he realizes that bandits were the reason she had been kidnapped before. He attacks the remaining bandits with a bolt of lightning, causing them to lose their temper and charge at him. The first one attacks Zagan, but Zagan catches the axe effortlessly, leaving the man stunned because he can't even move it. Zagan breaks the axe, then flicks the man with a single finger, sending him flying away. The bandits immediately realize that they're no match for him, so they call for their leader. Their leader appears, and it turns out that he's a sorcerer. He says, "This is the first time I've ever seen a sorcerer helping people." Then he uses a fire spell to attack Zagan, but Zagan uses his power to extinguish the flames. The sorcerer tries to cast the spell again, but suddenly finds himself unable to do anything. "What is happening?" he says. "I can't cast the spell." It turns out that Zagan has taken control of the spell and stolen it from him, then redirects it back at its owner to finish him off. A bolt of lightning crashes down onto the sorcerer and destroys him. After that, Zagan looks at the bandits and says, "Get ready. Just as you've robbed other people, you'll be robbed as well." The bandits are overcome with fear and flee from the scene. Then he looks at Nephilia and says, "See, they're nothing but useless dogs." The people gather around him, praising his strength and cheering for him. The carriage owner asks Zagan to protect him, offering him money in return. An idea suddenly comes to Zagan, and he says, "Is making money really this easy? If I went around getting rid of villains everywhere, I'd earn a lot of money." But no, sometimes the villains are the sorcerers themselves. After that, the two of them board the carriage and continue their journey. Nephilia asks him, "Why did you save those people from the bandits?" He replies, "Because they're nothing but scum, and they need to know their place." Afterward, they visit a clothing store, and Nephilia buys clothes for herself. Then he takes her to a weapon shop. He asks the shop owner to help him remove the collar that Nephilia is wearing. Nephilia is shocked and asks him, "Why do you want to remove it?" He says to her, "You're no longer the property of the 13th demon lord, so you don't need it anymore." The man examines the collar and realizes that a spell has been placed on it. He says, "Removing this collar won't be easy." Then he moves closer to Zagan and says, "If it's not removed properly, it could sever her neck. It would be best to use its key." Zagan thinks to himself and says, "No one had the key at the auction, which means it must be in the castle of Marcosius." Zagan pays him and thanks him. But the man says, "No, I don't want any money. I'll never forget that you saved me." We learn that a year ago his carriage had been attacked, and Zagan had saved both him and his daughter. After leaving the shop, Zagan can't believe that he's treating people this way now. The The shop owner says, back then, you couldn't even hold a conversation with Zagan, but now he's completely different. After that, he takes her to a restaurant. Nephilia asks him, are you really planning to remove this collar? Zagan replies, yes. She asks, aren't you afraid that I'll run away? Zagan thinks to himself that she actually might run away. Then he answers, maybe it can't even be removed in the first place. It's difficult. Then he notices that she's just sitting there without eating. Zagan asks her, don't you know how to use a fork and knife? Nephilia replies, no, because I've never eaten this way my entire life, and I've always been alone. After that, Nephilia picks up a spoon and begins eating with it. As for him, he picks up the fork to eat, but he can't manage to do it. So she feeds him herself using the spoon she has, then asks him to let her help him again. The next day, we return to the girl whom Zagan had saved. She is one of the enemies of sorcerers. She thinks to herself and says, could it really be that a sorcerer was the one who saved me? We had been eliminating the sorcerers who were kidnapping girls, but while I was returning, one of the knights attacked us. However, I discovered that he was actually one of the sorcerers. Then Lord Clavwell arrives and says to her, what's wrong? What are you thinking about? The girl is startled the moment she hears his voice. He says to her, what's gotten into you? You're the hero who saved those girls from being kidnapped, but this matter isn't over yet. After you eliminated the sorcerers inside the hideout, we searched through it and found evidence that someone is responsible for everything that's been happening. Person is the sorcerer, Zagan. He's the true mastermind behind the kidnappings. She is shocked and says to him, no, there's been a misunderstanding. He says to her, even if he has nothing to do with the kidnappings, he's still one of those evil sorcerers. She says, I want you to let me handle this mission myself. He replies, very well, I approve of assigning this mission to you. Meanwhile, our protagonist, Zagan, is asleep, dreaming about his past when he was a child, living with the sorcerer who taught him magic and placed a seal on his hand. When he wakes up, Nephilia says to him, you're awake, master. Breakfast is ready. Would you like to eat? Zagan asks her, you prepared it yourself, Nephilia. Nephilia replies, yes. Zagan responds, were you waiting for me to wake up? Nephilia says, I was watching your facial expressions. At that moment, he becomes extremely flustered, then says to her, good morning, and walks with her. When Zagan goes to have breakfast, he sees the dining table and is stunned by how beautiful it looks. He says to her, this dining hall used to look exactly like a graveyard. Did you clean all of this by yourself? He's completely astonished that she prepared all of this food on her own, and it's obvious from its appearance that it looks absolutely delicious. A few days later, our protagonist, Zagan, is sitting and reading books when Nephilia walks in and says to him, what is it that you're always studying, master? Zagan replies, what do you mean? Isn't it obvious that I'm studying sorcery? Nephilia responds, that's what I thought, but I wasn't sure what the purpose behind these drawings was. Zagan says to her, or is elf magic something entirely different? At that moment, Nephilia replies, I don't know, because I can't use magic. At that moment, he finds it strange because the quality of her mana is above average. Then he looks at her and says, look, my lady, theoretically, these symbols possess certain powers, but there's still a lot of debate and disagreement about the true origin of this writing and what it actually is. Some say it's the language of the masters, while others believe it's the symbol of a pact with demons. But honestly, I have no idea where the truth behind all of this lies. Afterward, he draws a symbol on the ground and continues, this is the simplest form of sorcery, a magic circle. This one produces something like lightning. Then, direct your mana toward it. We then see strange phenomena beginning to occur within the circle, and Zagan says to her, this level of magic is like making a leaf float on water. But you can add symbols to the circle to make it stronger, guide its direction, expand its range, and control the timing of when the sorcery manifests, along with several other possibilities. Then he releases the lightning, causing Nephilia to become frightened. Zagan apologizes for what happened before continuing, but anyone can use it if they channel a bit of mana into it. That's why it needs restrictions that ensure only the original caster can use it. Without those restrictions, any other mage could steal it with ease. The process of creating these magical mediums is called circles. Is there anything you don't understand? Nephilia asks him. The thing is, master, you've completely drifted away from the point. Is it possible to put something inside it? Zagan replies, your intuition is excellent. The answer is that it's impossible, and possible at the same time. It requires creating another magic circle inside an already completed one. Doing that would disrupt the flow of mana, causing both spells either to fail completely or function abnormally. However, it would be possible if you had absolute control over the flow of mana. Nephilia asks, what exactly does that mean? Does it mean you could nullify someone else's magic? Zygon answers, yes. If someone managed to do that, they would be safe from any spell and capable of repelling any type of magic. Theoretically, they would become the strongest mage on the face of the earth. But that's only theory. If it were that easy, everyone would have done it already. Besides, nobody is truly interested in studying this kind of thing seriously, although there are people crazy enough to pursue such an idea. Nephilia says, I think I'm beginning to understand the theory behind sorcery a little now, but does that mean anyone can use it as long as they know how it works? Zygon responds, you're right when it comes to sorcerers. Knowledge is directly tied to power. That's why we create tricks and traps to prevent others from stealing that knowledge. So be careful whenever you touch anything around here. Understood, Nephilia? She becomes frightened, but he explains that he was only joking. After that, she feels happy because it's the first time in all this time that she's had someone to talk to. Then she asks him what he intends to do with all of this power. And he tells her that he only uses it to protect himself because, when he was little, he came from an extremely poor family. His father was poor, and he had been forced to steal food just to survive. People beat him because of what he did, until one day a sorcerer kidnapped him, intending to sacrifice him. But our protagonist managed to save himself and kill that sorcerer. He tells her that this is why he simply wants to live his life. When he senses the presence of knights outside the castle, he says to her, I have friends coming. I'll go meet them, Nephi. You only need to prepare dinner for you and me, because my friends will be leaving quickly. At the same time, the commander walks alongside the knights as they all approach the castle. She attacks the magical barrier protecting it and destroys it with her sword, and that's when our protagonist appears before them. When he speaks with this girl, he realizes that she's the same girl he saved before. He thinks to himself that if he had known she was a knight, he would have let her die instead of helping her. As he keeps launching spells at them to test their strength, he notices that one of the knights runs toward Shastil and blocks the magic with his shield. When the first knight charges at him, Zygon effortlessly throws him into his companion. Then, when the third knight becomes enraged and approaches our protagonist to finish him off, Zygon shatters his sword, throws him to the ground, and places his foot on top of him. He has no desire to kill them because he doesn't want Nephilia to fear him. But then, an incredibly fierce battle erupts between him and Shastil. She doesn't want to reveal her true strength, but in the end, she activates the power of the Holy Sword and begins attacking him, revealing just how terrifying her power truly is. However, once they move away from the other knights lying defeated on the ground, she tells him that he must pretend to be dead because she sees him as a good person and hasn't forgotten that he once saved her. But then, Nephilia walks out of the castle. When one of the knights sees her, he throws his spear at her. Our protagonist immediately rushes forward and catches the spear in his own hand instead of letting it strike her. At that moment, she becomes furious over what happened, and her true power begins to emerge. Massive plants burst forth from the earth and begin restraining those knights. But in the end, our protagonist rushes over and stops her. Later that night, our protagonist is bewildered by what she had done, so he asks her, "How did you use sorcery?" She explains that it wasn't sorcery at all. Instead, she had used something called song magic, a power possessed by only a select number of elves, and she was one of them. Then she begins telling him about her incredibly painful past. Back in her village, she had been cursed, and no one loved her. One day, a group attacked the village, slaughtered everyone there, and took her captive, until she eventually ended up here with him in the castle. She continues crying as she tells him everything, but he comforts her. Then comes the shocking moment when he tells her that he cannot live without her. Hearing those words causes her to break down into even heavier tears. After, Nephilia finally calms down and stops crying. She asks him, "How is your wound?" He removes the bandage and says, "I don't feel any pain." Then he notices that the wounds on his hand have completely disappeared. That happened because he touched Nephilia, and through that contact his injuries vanished. He thanks her for making his wounds disappear. Night falls, and Zygon is sitting in his chair, about to go to sleep, when he notices Nephilia standing nearby. Zygon asks her, "What's wrong?" Nephilia says, "Why do you sleep in that chair? Go sleep on the bed. You'll be much more comfortable." Zygon replies, "No, the place where I'm sitting serves as the anchor point for the barriers. That's why I have to remain here." Nephilia says to him, "Then come sit with me." Zygon goes over and rests his head on her lap before saying, "What do you think? Don't you want to learn sorcery? Because what happened today, when you used your magic, you didn't know how to control it. The power you used was tremendous, even while you were wearing the collar." He says to her, I don't know whether learning sorcery will allow you to control your magic or not, but you will be able to use it to defend yourself. Nephilia says to him, if I learn it, will I be useful to you? Zagan says to her, yes, you will help me. Nephilia says to him, and will I be able to protect you? Zagan says to her, yes, you already managed to protect me from the knights. I want you to become my disciple. Then he thinks to himself that teaching someone else things like the techniques he has gathered is actually a wonderful thing. Nephilia says to him, you once said that when someone becomes strong, they stop understanding the feelings of the weak, and you described it as if it were normal. But I felt that this subject was painful for you. Zagan says to her, why would you say that? Nephilia says to him, because when you were speaking, you looked sad. You are not a bad person. You do not speak much, but I will never forget your kindness. The next day, Zagan meets Barbatos. Barbatos says to him, I heard the knights attacked you. How did you manage to survive them? Zagan says to him, they were weak. Barbatos says to him, I heard one of them was carrying a holy sword. Does that mean even the maiden of the holy sword could not defeat you? Zagan says to him, no, she was strong. She managed to destroy the barriers surrounding the castle, and I also want you to stop breaking through them. Then Nephilia comes in and serves tea to Barbatos, but the moment he sees her, he is shocked. He says to him, is she still with you even now? Zagan says to him, Nephilia has become my disciple. Barbatos is surprised and says, disciple? Zagan says to him, yes, there are sorcerers who are difficult to deal with, so she will be useful to me. Barbatos says to him, did she help you get rid of the knights? Zagan says to him, yes, she took them out in 1 second. Barbatos says to him, you want to become one of the demon lords. Zagan thinks to himself and says, if I can become one of the demon lords, I will be able to reach the key, and no one will be able to come near. Nephilia. But it has not been long since I started practicing sorcery, while there are people who have been practicing it for hundreds of years. They have more experience and knowledge than I do, but as long as I am still alive, I still have a chance to become one of the demon lords. Barbatos says to him, have you not grown attached to that girl? Zagan says to him, what is wrong with loving your disciple? Barbatos says to him, it seems there is still a little tenderness left in your heart. Zagan says to him, go on, get out of here. So Barbatos leaves. Nephilia says to him, are you two friends? Zagan says to her, friends? Of course not. You need to know your friends well and choose them carefully. She says to him, but you looked like you were enjoying yourself. He says to her, was I really enjoying myself with that idiot? Then Zagan stands up and says to her, I am going to repair the barriers the knights destroyed. Come with me so you can learn the basics of sorcery circles. After some time, Nephilia continues learning sorcery while also handling her duties and preparing the meals assigned to her. As time passes, Nephilia begins to change and become better. But when it comes to magic, she is still struggling to control it, and after learning more, she becomes able to create magical spells. Zagan thinks about wanting to get rid of the collar. Then night falls, and he finds a massive bird coming toward him carrying a letter. Zagan takes it. The moment he opens it, he is surprised because the demon lords have sent him an invitation. We learn that beneath the city, there are ruins once used by the demon lords as a hideout. Zagan reaches the place where the 12 demon lords gather. He enters and finds them all present. The moment the first one speaks, Zagan feels an immense pressure of mana. He says to them, why did you bring me here? One of them says to him, you are bold to speak to us that way. You will become one of the demon lords. Then he uses an enormous power to show Zagan the crest of Marcosius, and tells him that in order to hold the position of a demon lord, he must possess a crest. Zagan feels a tremendous power emanating from the crest. That power is coming from the demon lords themselves. One of them says to him, what is wrong? Do you not like it? Zagan says, I do, but I do not understand why you chose me when there are people stronger than me. One of the demon lords says to him, it is true that your power is still weak, but no one is capable of killing you. You killed your first sorcerer when you were 8 years old. You learned sorcery quickly and created your own unique sorcery. Zagan thinks to himself, they discovered my secret weapon. Then one of them says to him, your power is great and no one will be able to stand against you. Zagan says to them, does that mean I can take your power? They all burst into laughter. Then an old woman says to him, but you should know that we can take far more from you. One of them says to him, the world you are about to enter has no peace in it, only darkness. Zagan says, from the moment I became a sorcerer, I have known all of that. Then Zagan says to them, there is something I want. If I obtain it, I will become one of you. They say to him, we agree to anything. He says to them, then I will become one of you. Then he takes the crest that will make him one of them. After that, Zagan returns and tells Nephilia that he has become one of the demon lords. And since he has become one of them, he has obtained the possessions of Marcosius. Then he takes out the key and uses it to unlock the spell. The shackle around her neck breaks. Zagan says to her, you can leave now. After that, Nephilia wakes up and finds herself in another place. She says, what brought me here? I have to go back right now. But when she looks beside her, she finds that the shackle that had been around her neck has been broken, and she says, why did he do this to me? Nephilia is sitting when she suddenly sees Shastile in front of her. She says to her, are you all right? But Shastile is surprised to see that it is Nephilia. Nephilia surprises her as well and says, you can kill me if you want. Aren't you one of the knights who kill sorcerers? I became the disciple of a sorcerer. Shastile screams and says to her, I was not trying to do anything to you. People gather because of the scream and assume that Shastile is bothering Nephilia. The girl who owns the clothing shop steps in and stands in front of Shastile, saying to her, what do you want from her? You are a knight, and you are doing this to a poor girl? Shastile says to her, you are misunderstanding the situation. The people turn against Shastile and tell her to leave. Nephilia stops them and says, she did not do anything to me. After that, they all go sit somewhere together. The girl with them is named Manuela. Nephilia is saddened because of what Zagan did to her, and she begins to cry, saying, why did he do that to me? After she tells them what happened to her, Shastile says, cast you out after everything you did for him? Does that mean he was using you this whole time? Manuela asks her, did something happen before he did that to you? Nephilia says to them, the last thing he told me was that he had become a demon lord. They are shocked the moment they hear that. Manuela says to her, this town used to be ruled by a demon lord named Marcosius, and it lived in peace. But after he died, the town went through difficult times because of the crimes that started happening. Shastile says to her, yes, like the kidnapping of girls by sorcerers. Then Manuela says to her, didn't the church capture the one responsible for all of this? He was a sorcerer. But Shastile remembers the Lord's words when he told her that the true culprit was Zagan, and that he was the one behind those kidnappings. Nephilia asks, do the people of this town hate the knights? Manuela replies, because they used to demand huge sums of money in exchange for rescuing the girls. Nephilia says, but Shastile had nothing to do with that. Then Shastile says to them, sorcerers are the true evil behind all of this. There are 12 holy swords, but on the other side, there are 13 demon lords. Even if we confront them, we are still outnumbered. And if the demon lords choose a new demon lord, the church will eliminate him before he can gather his strength. There are also countless sorcerers trying to increase their power. Nephilia thinks to herself and says, so that's why Zagan kept me away from all of this. Shastile says to her, Zagan really gathers sorcerers and have them kidnap people to use as sacrifices? Nephilia says to them, no, he would never do that. He was always saving weak people. Shastile replies, I'm certain of that, because when I fought him, he could have killed me easily. But he didn't. When I first met him, I felt that he needed someone in his life. He wanted someone to stand beside him, yet he kept avoiding that. Nephilia is surprised that Shastile managed to notice and understand something like that. She thinks to herself, even though I feel jealous, I'm happy. Then she stands up and says, I'm going back to Zagan. Just because he's strong and no one can defeat him doesn't mean he can't be hurt. Shastile says to her, I'll do what I have to do as well. I'll find out who the sorcerer was that pretended to be Zagan and tried to kidnap people. But suddenly, the knights arrive at the scene. Then smoke spreads throughout the restaurant, and it turns out to be a sorcerer. Shastile says to Manuela, get out of here. That sorcerer declares, my name is Zagan, and if you want these two girls back, come to my castle. Then we cut to the real Zagan, who is standing near his castle. He has already dealt with the knights who attacked him. He says to them, how could you fall into a trap this easily? Then he thinks to himself, I made this trap together with Nephilia. The best thing would be to stay away from her. The people in town love her, but before he can leave, one of the knights grabs his leg. Shastile says to him, please spare her. She kept saying that you had nothing to do with the kidnappings. She even wanted to find the real person behind all of it. Zagan says to her, I don't understand what you're talking about. Suddenly, Manuela arrives and says to the knight, I told you that it wasn't Zagan who did this. Then she says to Zagan, Nephilia and Shastile have been kidnapped. Zagan is shocked the moment he hears that. He says, if I save them now, they'll know that I'm connected to them. And if they find out, the church won't leave Nephilia alone. Manuela says to him, "What's wrong with you? What's gotten into you?" Nephilia wanted to return to you. "Can't you understand what Nephilia has been trying to do for your sake?" Zagan replies, "Yes, I'm scum. Sorcerers treat people as tools. That's why we have to be careful about those close to us. Nephilia is close to me, and because of that, anyone who gets near her, I'll destroy them. I'm going to save Nephilia. Don't you want to come with me?" But the knights end up going with him as well. Then we return to Nephilia and Shastil, who are inside a cave, bound in restraints that prevent Nephilia from using her power. It is revealed that the one who kidnapped them is Barbados. He says to Nephilia, "Do you know who the first person Zagan ever killed was? That person was my master, but don't misunderstand me. I'm not seeking revenge for my master. The castle where Zagan lives and all the money he spent on you, all of that was supposed to belong to me. I'm the one who made the church want to get rid of him, but it didn't work. Everyone I sent to eliminate him failed." Shastil says to him, "So you're the one responsible for the kidnappings?" Barbados replies, "I did all of this to prove to the demon lords that I am the one worthy of becoming one of them. And to do that, I need to perform rituals that will allow me to reach that position. And this elf possesses an enormous amount of mana." Nephilia says to him, "What you're doing is meaningless." Barbados replies, "I'll do whatever I want." Nephilia says to him, "Don't you know that Zagan has become one of the demon lords?" Barbados is stunned the moment he hears that. Rage immediately overtakes him as he removes the chains restraining Nephilia and drags her toward him, planning to use her for what he intends to accomplish. But suddenly, the entire place is destroyed, and Zagan arrives. Barbados says to him, "How did you know it was me?" Zagan replies, "I had already begun to suspect you. Besides, the person you sent to my castle managed to breach my security system. There was only one person capable of doing that, and it was you. That's why, every time you tried to take revenge on me, you'd come visit me just to see the results." Barbados says, "So you knew everything I was doing this whole time and you still treated me like that?" Zagan replies, "Because I wanted to know what you were planning." Then, Zagan unleashes his power and attacks Barbados, striking his arm with brutal force before delivering powerful blows to his leg, leaving him badly wounded. After that, he goes to remove Nephilia's restraints. Nephilia runs toward him, embraces him tightly, and says, "Don't leave me again. Why do you want to abandon me and remain like this?" Barbados uses his power and attacks Zagan, but his strength is weak and completely ineffective. No matter how many spells Barbados casts at Zagan, Zagan destroys them all effortlessly because he knows exactly how Barbados uses his magic. Barbados says to him, "You took my master's power." Zagan replies, "If your master had truly been strong, he wouldn't have died. Your master tried to trap me inside a magic circle, but while I was trying to escape, I memorized its design and drew it onto my hand. Then he managed to catch me and used a spell to kill me, but I used my own power and created a magic circle that ended his life." Barbados unleashes countless magical spells to attack Zagan. Zagan manages to stop every single one of them. Furious, Barbados shouts, "Those are magical spells you were never supposed to have seen before. How were you able to do that in a fraction of a second?" Zagan replies, "If this is the extent of your power, then even an amateur could have defeated you. Back then, when I left my friends behind and went off to study sorcery, you kept appearing before me over and over again, and I never understood why. You were always showing up." Barbados says, "Because I was curious to see what a child like you was capable of." Then, Zagan activates his sorcery and says, "Do you see all of these circles? They're your circles. I took them and improved them." Barbados is horrified the moment he sees that and says, "You took my spells?" Zagan replies, "Yes. And as you already know, Barbados, I've become one of the demon lords, and I gained a title of my own." We return to the time when Zagan received that title, and it was Sorcerer Slayer. Zagan attacks Barbados with overwhelming force and completely defeats him. Barbados lies on the ground and says, "He took all of my spells. I can't defeat him anymore. He's become too strong." Then he adds, "I won't go near you ever again." Zagan uses his sorcery and strikes with tremendous force, but it turns out that he never actually hit Barbados. Instead, he struck the ground and said, "I was just kidding with you." Barbados becomes furious and says to him, "You'll die if you leave me alive." Zagan replies, "You won't be able to do anything, but I'll let you live until you become strong enough to make me change my mind." But suddenly, the spell beneath them activates. Zagan says, "Why are you doing this?" Barbados responds, "I wasn't the one who did it." Zagan thinks to himself and says, "When I struck the ground, my power reacted with the spell." Then he tells Nephilia and the others to get out of the area immediately. A strange-looking smoke begins pouring out of the spell. Zagan asks Barbados, "What were you planning to do with this spell?" Barbados replies, "I was planning to summon a demon." And then, a demon actually emerges, appearing incredibly powerful. We learn that demons truly existed, yet there has never been any proof of their existence. However, both the symbols of sorcery and the symbols of the church were passed down to humanity because of demons. The demon standing before them is merely a shadow because the summoning wasn't complete, and that's because there had been no sacrifice. Zagan says, "I can sense an incredible amount of power from it." But what happens next is completely unexpected. Suddenly, the demon approaches Zagan and says, "My lord, I am at your command." Zagan can't believe that the demon is bowing before him. He looks at the crest and sees it emitting light. He says, "Just what exactly did I inherit?" Then he orders the demon to return to the place it came from. The demon obeys immediately and disappears. The spell on the ground vanishes, and the cave begins collapsing. Zagan gathers everyone and escapes from the cave. They find the cave crumbling around them as rocks crash down in front of them, but the knights are there to help everyone escape. Zagan says to Barbados, "Do you want to fight?" Barbados replies, "No, I don't want to fight. Come on, let me buy you a drink and let me go." Zagan agrees and lets him leave. Then, Nephilia says to him, "I want to be with you." Zagan replies, "I want you to stay with me too, but not as a servant and not as a disciple. I want you to be with me in another way." Nephilia understands what he means and agrees. Then she takes out the collar that had once been around her neck and says, "I want you to put it back on me." Zagan says to her, "But I don't want to put that collar on you." Nephilia replies, "Because it was the reason we first met." Zagan agrees and places the collar around her neck once more. Then Nephilia asks him, "If I'm no longer your servant or your disciple, then what will I be to you?" Zagan is caught completely off guard and doesn't know how to answer her. After that, news spreads throughout the city that Zagan has become one of the demon lords, and people begin seeing him as a good person. Meanwhile, two sorcerers sit together listening to everything being said. Grimoire laughs and says, "It doesn't matter." The other person says, "I thought you'd be upset," but she replies, "I'm not upset," and continues drinking. He says to her, "Isn't that enough already?" Grimoire responds, "Be careful. Things are about to change in this city." Several men talk about Zagan, who is about to become the city's new ruler. One of them says, "I saw him going to the market to buy things for himself." Then we move to the church where the Lord is standing and speaking with Shastile. He asks her, "Are you refusing to carry out the mission to eliminate Zagan?" Shastile replies, "As you've seen yourself, he's innocent. He hasn't done anything." The Lord says to her, "You're defending him. That's why you can no longer remain one of the knights." The other knights try to stand up for her, but she tells them to be quiet because she doesn't want them to do that. We then see Shastile surrendering her holy sword to the church and giving up her position. Unfortunately, she is still going to be put on trial. She surrendered the sword because she wasn't acting according to her own will. The church had been controlling her all along. At that moment, the Lord approaches her and says, "Don't look so depressed, Shastile. Do I really seem unaffected by a verdict like this? It'll take time, but eventually your punishment will be lifted. They say that the holy swords choose their wielders, and receiving this kind of punishment means that you're one of the chosen. That isn't something that normally happens. That's why I'm asking you to be patient with me. No matter how old I become, I'll find a way to resolve this. But understand this. The only protection I can offer you is political protection, because a certain person is on his way here. The most terrifying wielder of the holy swords, Raphael Hyorendel." Shastile is stunned by what she hears because this person is truly terrifying. But the Lord continues and says, "I'm sure you've heard the rumors about how cruel he is. I don't even know why he's coming here in the first place." She leaves the church, walking alone while thinking that if that man really comes here, he'll undoubtedly eliminate her as a traitor. But she tells herself that she only became a knight to help as many people as possible. Everything else means nothing to her, and she keeps walking. Meanwhile, on the other side, our protagonist, Zagan, is inside his library reading books. Suddenly, he notices the demon lord's crest on his hand. He begins saying, "The beings known as demons truly exist somewhere. The proof is that one of them knelt before this crest. I've spent the past 2 weeks researching this matter, but I couldn't find a single clue among the information I obtained from Marcosius's castle." While he's standing there, Nephilia enters, trying to surprise him and cheer him up because he's completely exhausted after spending 2 weeks conducting research. At that moment, he doesn't know how to respond to her or what to say, but she tells him that she prepared lunch for him. There are numerous dishes, meat, and soup. She's completely pampering him. He's astonished by the amount of food and deeply impressed by how delicious it looks. The two of them sit down to eat and enjoy themselves immensely. Then suddenly the palace comes under attack by 4. The entire place begins shaking from the spells being hurled at it. Without warning, he bursts into the dining hall and says to our protagonist, "Are you Zagan, the demon lord?" Zagan replies, "Common courtesy says you should introduce yourself before asking someone else's name. Even so, I feel like I've seen you before at the auction for the illusionist, one of the candidates for the position of Demon Lord." 4 says to him, "Zagan, Demon Lord, I'm the one who's going to kill you and take all of your power." He repeatedly tries to attack our protagonist, but our hero effortlessly dodges every assault. Then he rises and delivers an incredibly powerful blow that sends the attacker crashing to the ground. But the real shock comes when they approach and discover that this fearsome opponent is actually a young girl who had been disguising herself as that monstrous creature all along. At that moment, they take her to a room so she can rest. But when that girl wakes up and sees our protagonist standing in front of her, she tries to attack him. He grabs her and says, "You owe Nephilia your thanks. If it weren't for her, I would have broken your neck and thrown you outside." 4 says to him, "Why?" Zagan says to her, "What do you mean?" 4 says to him, "I came here to kill you. I'm your enemy, so why did you let me live?" Zagan tells her that Nephilia was the one who saved her, not him, and that is why he let her live. But he asks her why she attacked him. 4 says to him, "I wanted power because I'm weak." At that moment, he tells her that he understands her and understands why she did what she did, because for her, power is the most important thing in life. Then she tells him that she belongs to the dragon race, but she is weak, and that she attacked him specifically because he is the newest demon lord. At that time, our protagonist says that she reminds him of himself when he was young, and he decides to teach her, but not in an obvious way. He tells her that her punishment is to help Nephilia for 1 week, and during that time he will teach her. Of course, he does not say that out loud, because he is not going to teach her directly. When Nephilia goes out with her and they begin helping each other wash the clothes, they start talking about our protagonist. Nephilia tells her that he is very kind and does not hurt anyone without a reason. They continue speaking kindly about him while he keeps listening to them, happy with what he hears. But he still does not want to appear kind, because in the end, he is one of the demon lords. After that, while they are sitting down to eat, our protagonist says that he will take 4 to the old castle, filled with the knowledge of the previous demon lord. She is shocked because he is allowing her into his library, which contains secrets. And on top of that, he wants to take her to the old castle too. He tells her that it is normal, because he believes knowledge should not belong to just one person. During the conversation, he ends up upsetting her, and she starts crying, so he gently pats her until she stops. After the meal, she goes into sleep, while our protagonist sits beside her with Nephilia. Then, 4 grabs his hand. At that moment, he feels an extremely strange sensation and thinks about having a family that includes both 4 and Nephilia. After a week, 4 is still with Zagan, helping Nephilia with the housework and writing everything down in her diary. She says she does not understand the relationship between Zagan and Nephilia, because Nephilia treats him with great tenderness, while Zagan spends his day in the library reading books on sorcery. He also helps Nephilia learn sorcery. The next day, Zagan takes 4 to the clothing shop, and she buys new clothes. After they leave the shop, 4 comes closer to them and holds both of their hands. Zagan feels something he has never felt before. At the same time, Shasti has become an ordinary citizen, and she feels sad after returning everything she owned. She thinks to herself, "I did this because it will delay the operation to eliminate Zagan, but I know he will never find out, and he will never thank me for it. I don't know how I managed to do this. I don't want anything to hurt Zagan and Nephilia. I want them to live together, become a family, and enjoy their lives." As she walks, she is surprised to see them right in front of her. She sees 4 with them and assumes she is their daughter, then says to them, "Did you two already have a child that quickly?" They are shocked by what she says. Zagan says to her, "How can you say something like that? There is nothing between me and Nephilia." 4 says, "Who is this?" Zagan says to her, "I do not know who she is." Shastil is shocked the moment she hears that. Nephilia says to him, "This is Shastil." Zagan says to her, "I did not recognize her because she changed her clothes." Then Zagan says to 4, "She is Nephilia's friend." Then Zagan asks Shastil, "Why are you dressed like this?" At that moment, the knights arrive and one of them says to her, "Isn't it dangerous for you to walk through the street dressed like that?" They are startled when they see Zagan standing there, and they wonder why he came. 4 becomes irritated and wants to attack them, but Zagan says to her, "No, do not attack them. This city has many people who are close to Nephilia. The guards want to take Shastil with them to the Lord, so they take her and leave the area." Nephilia says to him, "Will Shastil be all right?" Zagan says to her, "They have strong backing, and I cannot interfere because I am a sorcerer. If I get involved in this matter, I will only make the problems worse." Then Zagan says to 4, "Did the knights do something to you that made you want to attack them?" 4 says to him, "Do we need a reason to attack them?" Zagan thinks to himself and says, "I hope this does not cause problems." After that, they go to the palace of the previous demon lord. 4 says to him, "I can't believe a palace like this exists underground." Zagan says to her, "It may have been built on the surface, but he used a spell to lower it underground." 4 catches a scent she knows very well and approaches the door. Then she tells them there are dragons inside. Zagan says to her, "Are you sure?" 4 says to him, "The shape of this cave reminds me of the place where I used to live." Zagan says to her, "If you find anything related to dragons, tell me." Then Zagan opens the door and they all enter. 4 sees a strange-looking insect in front of her and asks Zagan, "What is that insect?" Zagan says to her, "That is a golem made through sorcery." Nephilia says to him, "Placed here to protect the area?" Zagan says to her, "Yes, but it stopped working when the demon lord died." They continue moving forward, and 4 finds a spell drawn on the ground in the shape of dragons. Zagan says to her, "Do you know what it does?" 4 says to him, "There might be a door behind it." 4 uses her power and manages to activate the spell, but Nephilia seems to want something, so he approaches her and places his hand on her head to reassure her. 4 manages to open the door, and they enter the library. Zagan says to them, "Our goal is to gather any books that speak about demons or demon symbols." 4 says to him, "Can you read people's minds? You were able to know what Nephilia wanted the moment you looked at her." Zagan says to her, "Nephilia gives me hints when she wants something, and I understand her hints. You will also be able to know what people want when you live with them for a long time." Then 4 finds a book about the 12 holy swords. Inside the book, Zagan finds the writing carved on those swords. Zagan says, "I will be able to learn information about the crest." Then we move to Shasti, who is standing before the master of the knights, Raphael. He says to her, "So you are the maiden of the sword. I heard you left the service because you disobeyed orders. How many sorcerers have you killed?" Shasti thinks to herself, "Raphael is the person who has killed the most sorcerers, and he will surely cut off my head after what I did." Then she says to him, "I do not see that as something worth boasting about." Raphael is surprised the moment he hears that. Then he laughs and says to her, "It has been a long time since I met someone who spoke to me like that. I was going to finish you off." But the knights stand in front of him and stop him. Then the Lord arrives and stops what he is doing. He says to him, "I am here to protect the knights." Raphael says to him, "You took Shastil's sword, and I want it, because the sword is the one that chooses who will wield it. And if that person is still alive, no one else can use that sword, which is why I will cut off this girl's head." The Lord says to him, "What you're saying will not happen." Raphael says to him, "You will not tell me what to do." Shastil says to him, "What you're saying is wrong. If we use our swords however we want, then we are nothing more than murderers." Raphael becomes furious and says to her, "You will die." Then he says to the Lord, "Give her a sword so she can defend herself." The Lord goes and brings her the sword. Shastil says, "Did he do all of this just so the sword would return to me?" After that, she goes to her room and finds a letter on her desk. We move to Zagan, where we find him sitting with Barbados. Barbados mocks him and says, "You're living with a little girl." Zagan says to him, "How did you know?" Barbados says to him, "The whole city knows who the girl living with you in the castle is." Zagan says to him, "Do you know her?" Barbados says to him, "Then she must be a sorceress and it can only be Gremory. But didn't for attack you a few days ago? There are rumors saying she's a dragon. Forget about for now and tell me who the child is. But be careful, because the church has sent someone extremely dangerous. That person is Raphael, and he's coming for you now. They say he ate a dragon." Zagan remembers what 4 told him, that humans believe if they eat a dragon, they will become stronger. Zagan says to him, "Why are you helping me?" Barbatos says to him, "I want to take the house of the demon lord who died." Zagan says to him, "No, Suddenly, Raphael enters. Barbatos is shocked by the presence of Raphael Hyrendel. Everyone in the place runs away and the waitress faints. Barbatos tries to attack Raphael, but Zagan stops him and tells him that Raphael did not come to fight them. Raphael says to him, "It seems the new demon lord is a calm and sensible person." Zagan says to himself, "I invited him to sit down so the situation would pass smoothly, but the truth is, I can't find a single thing to say to this huge man." After that, Zagan says to him, "Tell me, do you have business with me, Dragon Slayer?" Raphael replies, "My name is Raphael, and I learned that you fought one of my fellow knights, so I wanted to see you." But Zagan says to him, "I'm sure I don't look impressive at all next to you." At that moment, Raphael laughs and says to him, "Even so, you look exactly like the villain everyone has been talking about in the rumors." Zagan says to him, "I heard your favorite hobby is killing sorcerers. Aren't you bothered that there are 2 of them right in front of you?" But Raphael says to him, "Don't be stupid. All I did was put out a few fires that could have turned into hell." At that moment, Zagan finds it strange because this is not the story he heard, and he says to himself, "Is this really the man who killed around 500 sorcerers?" Then his thoughts are interrupted by Raphael's voice as he says to him, "You fought Shastil before, Demon Lord, didn't you? Was she strong enough to pose a danger to you?" Zagan says to him, "I'm not sure. She was stronger than anyone I had faced before, at least among those who came before her." Raphael says to him, "All right, I understand. That means she poses a serious threat to the church." Zagan is surprised and says to him, "I don't understand what you mean." Raphael tells him that she abandoned the mission to kill him and therefore he must kill her. Then he leaves while our protagonist is left shocked by what Shastil has done. At that moment, Zagan asks Barbatos to go check on Shastil. Although Barbatos does not like it, he is forced to go. When Zagan returns home, he finds Nephilia sitting there, still awake, and 4 asleep on her lap from sheer exhaustion. Nephilia tells him that she spent the entire day working with her and organizing the books, and it becomes clear that 4 wants to keep staying with them because she has grown fond of them. After that, Zagan talks with Nephilia, and the 2 of them are just about to begin confessing their feelings to each other, but suddenly, Barbatos arrives carrying Shastil, who appears to have drunk poison. When Nephilia gets up to help Shastil, 4 wakes up and notices the holy sword with Shastil, so she wants to kill her, but Zagan stops her and says, "She is my guest. You cannot kill her. Do you hate the knights of the church?" 4 says to him, "You must have noticed, Zagan. I became a sorceress so I could take revenge on the knights of the church." Zagan replies, "Was she the one who hurt you?" 4 says to him, "There was someone holding a holy sword, and he was the one who killed my father." Zagan says to her, "You're right, but she is not the person who did that. Do you understand what I mean? If you kill her, the person you're seeking revenge against will not feel a thing. All you will do is create new enemies for yourself, and they will become nothing but new obstacles in your path. That is a mistake anyone still at the beginning makes." At that moment, 4 becomes extremely angry and says to him, "And what do you even know, Zagan?" But Zagan approaches her and says, "True revenge is not simply hurting someone. No, true revenge is making the one before you live in endless torment, destroying them and driving them into a state of indescribable despair and terror, making them beg you to let them die. And then, if your conscience allows it, kill them. That alone is what makes your revenge complete. Any ordinary revenge will not extinguish your fire, nor will it ease your heart." 4 is shocked and asks him if he has ever taken revenge on someone before. Zagan says to her, "Yes, but I failed and killed him in an instant, and I felt no relief after what I did. That is why I will teach you how to take revenge properly, 4. And luckily for you, this castle is full of torture tools." Barbatos is horrified by what he hears and says to Zagan, "You're insane. Are you going to make a child do those things?" But Zagan does not answer him. After that, when Shastil wakes up, she finds herself at Zagan's place and thanks him. But he tells her that she should thank Nephilia, because he did nothing. He asks her who could have done this to her, but she does not know. She tells him what happened during her day, and says that she met someone from a sect in the church, and that person asked her to join them, but she asked for time to think. She still does not know who poisoned her, and she suspects it was Raphael. But Zagan tells her that Raphael does not do petty things like that. He would have cut off her head immediately. After that, we see Shastil working as a maid alongside Nephilia, because Zagan will not let her stay with him for free. As for 4, she hates her and keeps playing pranks on her every now and then until she drives her mad. After that, 4 is sitting and writing in her diary, talking about Chastille, how she is living with them, and the events that happened. 4 is sitting and writing in her diary, and she says, I have started to feel like I am one of them. After the way Zagan and Nephilia treat me, I have started to feel like I might forget my revenge against Zagan. But I cannot forget that I must take revenge on him. I cannot stay here any longer, because this will end with the demon lords watching everything. Then 4 fled from the place, and we moved to the cave that leads to the castle of the late demon lord. She stepped inside because she had come here to obtain immense power that would allow her to kill the bearer of the sacred sword. 4 was troubled that she had entered this place without Zagan knowing, but suddenly she found Raphael standing behind her. He had been following her the entire way until they arrived here. The moment 4 saw him, she realized that he was the bearer of the sacred sword. She remembered that this was the very sword used to kill her father. Fury consumed 4, and she charged at Raphael, but he drew his sword and attacked her. At that very moment, Zagan arrived and cast a spell to protect her. He caught the blade and said to her, I knew you would come here. It turned out that Barbatos was the one who had helped Zagan. 4 asked him, I betrayed you, so why are you helping me? Zagan replied, I understand how you feel. Then Nephi spoke to him and asked, Is 4 okay? Zagan answered, Yes. Then Zagan said to Raphael, I warned you before. Raphael replied, This is the first time I've ever seen a sorcerer defend someone else. Zagan then told 4, Stay back. Zagan unleashed his power while Raphael drew upon the power of his sword. The sword's power was so overwhelming that it shattered Zagan's spell. Raphael said, The demon lord has fallen before the power of a sword he couldn't withstand. 4 asked Zagan, Why are you doing this? Zagan replied, Didn't I tell you that I would teach you how to take revenge? Then the two of them clashed. Zagan's spell was extraordinarily powerful. He said, Because I was attacked by a sacred sword once before, I learned from the legacy of the previous demon lord how to use a defensive spell. This spell absorbs mana from its surroundings to maintain itself. With a powerful strike, Zagan forced Raphael back, but Raphael rushed at him once again to strike him down. Zagan said to him, You're still able to wield that sword? Anyone else would have had their body shattered by it long ago. Raphael assaulted him with powerful blows, but Zagan managed to evade every attack. Then Zagan countered with a spell, but Raphael cut through it with his sword. Zagan said, This spell can withstand 3 strikes, but it's still incomplete. Raphael attacked Zagan again, but Zagan landed a blow that sent him flying. Zagan said, I can still use another spell. After the blow I just dealt him, he shouldn't be able to stand again. But to his surprise, Raphael rose to his feet once more. We then move to Chastille, who goes to Nephi and asks, Where is Zagan? Nephi replies, Zagan went with Barbatos to find 4. He's protecting 4 from someone attacking her. Chastille wants to go, but she's afraid that the church will kill her. Nephi says to her, You're not going. Chastille replies, No, this isn't the right time. Nephi says, Zagan is strong and doesn't need help, but if I could go, I would. Chastille says to her, If you want to go, then go. Nephi replies, I can't do that. Then she embraces her and says, It's my duty to obey his words. Chastille begins to cry and says, I wanted to help him, but I'm a knight. I can't do that. Nephi replies, I don't want you to be sad. When you said that the first time you met Zagan, you felt that he was lonely. I was happy that there was someone who could understand what Zagan was feeling. Chastille takes her sword and heads toward Zagan. We return to Zagan, who sees Raphael standing before him. The wounds Raphael had sustained begin to disappear. Zagan thinks to himself, So the rumors were true. Dragon flesh grants humans power. Then Zagan says to 4, This man won't die easily. You need to think carefully about how you want to take revenge on him. 4 says to him, My father is the dragon you killed. Zagan is shocked when he realizes that her father was that ancient dragon who had lived since ages long past. He thinks to himself, Could this man really have killed that dragon? 4 tells them, My father used to help people, but they exploited him and poisoned him. One day, a group of knights visited him. After that, my father went with them and never returned. I searched for him until I finally found him dead, and the one who did that to him was Raphael. Raphael attacks 4 to finish her off, but Zagan intercepts him and delivers a powerful strike, sending Raphael flying into the distance. Raphael attacks 4 once more, but 4 unleashes tremendous power against him. However, Chastille suddenly appears in front of him, takes the attack head-on, and stops it. Zagan is astonished when he sees Chastille stop both 4's power and Raphael's assault. Zagan asks Raphael, What is it that you want? Raphael replies, After hearing the name of 4's father, I no longer wish to kill. Shastil says to Raphael, "You're the one who sent me those letters. You're also the one who took the name of the dragon you killed." Zagan is stunned and says, "Why would someone from the church use the name of a dragon?" Then Zagan senses that something is wrong. Suddenly, a gate opens before them. A demon emerges from the gate. Zagan remembers and says, "It's just like the one that appeared before." The demon begins absorbing the surrounding mana to nourish itself with energy. Shastil grows weaker as it drains her power. 4 says to them, "That's the ruler of the demon castle." Zagan says, "Because of the force created by the collision of the two swords, the seal has been broken." Then Zagan orders it to return, but the demon ignores his command. The demon unleashes an enormous burst of power and directs it toward 4, but Raphael takes the blow in her place. Zagan uses his power and attacks the demon with a devastating strike, successfully destroying it. Then Zagan rushes over to check on 4 and finds that she's unharmed. Raphael's injuries, however, are severe, and he had done all of this because he believed himself responsible for her father's death. 4 looks at Raphael, and in his eyes, she sees the image of her father. Raphael says to them, "I said that I killed the dragon, but I could never have killed a dragon of that strength." 4 replies, "You're lying. I saw you eating his corpse." Raphael says to her, "Do you really think your father would have been defeated that easily? Do you truly believe I had enough strength to defeat him? Your father came to me himself and asked me to accompany him, so we could eliminate a certain enemy, and that enemy was a demon." 4 replies, "Do you really expect me to believe something like that?" Raphael says to her, "That demon suddenly appeared and slaughtered a large number of knights, and I was gravely wounded as well. The dragon also suffered severe injuries, and that demon may return once again." Zagan then says to them, "I've encountered a demon before. I don't know whether they'll return to this world again or not. That's why I've been searching through ancient books for a way to defeat them." 4 asks them, "So, the demon is the one who killed my father?" Raphael replies, "Your father didn't die at the demon's hands. He destroyed it at the cost of his own life." 4 asks, "Then, what am I supposed to do now?" Raphael says to her, "I don't want you to be sad. I want you to be proud, because your father was strong. Your father sacrificed himself for your sake, and if killing me will truly make you happy, then go ahead. But demons threaten the world we live in, and both we and the sorcerers fight against them together. That's why your father made me consume him, because I still have one final mission I want to fulfill. We have to end the war between the sorcerers and the church." Barbados says to him, "No one will believe you. You killed a great number of sorcerers." Raphael says to him, "You're right. I cannot be the one to reconcile you both, and that is why Shastil will be the one to do it." But then the demon awakens once again. Zagan moves to finish it off, but Raphael stops him. He says, "This demon is dangerous. It's the same demon that the dragon and I fought." It becomes clear that this demon was created by the previous demon lord. Zagan says, "Even if it's just a corpse, it's still dangerous because it's a demon. But the blow I landed on, it didn't do anything." Shastil goes to him and says, "I won't ask you to trust me. I want to fight with you." Zagan says to her, "You're not strong enough to fight." But she tells him, "I'll help you," and then activates the power of the sword. Zagan sees the sword's power and says, "The power of this sword is not like the power of Raphael's sword." The demon unleashes a massive force, so Shastil attacks it. The demon strikes her with its power, but she stands firm and blocks that force. Then Zagan attacks the demon and destroys its arm. Zagan sees the aura emerging from the monster, and that aura is what helps it restore itself again. Shastil moves quickly and destroys the particles of the demon's arm. Zagan uses his power and strikes the demon with it. He forces out all the aura inside it. Shastil asks him, "How were you able to defeat it?" He says to her, "The spell I struck it with absorbs the mana in the area. That is why I used it against the demon. It has black mana, and that is what the spell fed on. This spell is used against holy swords and demons, but it still needs to become stronger. As for you, you turned out to be strong." Shastil is surprised the moment she hears that, and she says to him, "I came here to fight with you, even if we are sorcerers, and I am a knight." After that, Zagan goes to heal Raphael. The wound is severe, and the dragon's power cannot help him. Raphael says to Shastil, "I want you to be the leader, and all the people helping me will stand with you, because that was the dragon's idea." Zagan says to him, "Why did you kill so many sorcerers?" Raphael says to him, "I killed them because they were attacking me. I was trying to stop them, but they kept attacking me. Zagan says to him, did you not see yourself when you came to us at the tavern? Raphael says to him, I came to warn you of the danger. Zagan says to him, you need to pay attention to your behavior. Raphael says to Shastil, return to the church, and I will handle those who want to get rid of you. I will be able to endure, so do not worry about anything. Shastil says to him, do you know who tried to kill me? Raphael says to her, how do you still not know? 4 says to Raphael, what was my father like? Raphael says to her, he was a powerful dragon. The moments I spent fighting alongside him are moments I will never forget. After that, he leaves the place. Zagan and everyone with him return home. Then we move to the Lord, who gathers the knights and says to them, have you still not found Shastil? One of the knights says to him, we do not know where to find her. The Lord orders them to leave, then becomes furious and says, I want to get rid of her, and if it were not for the others refusing, I would have ended her long ago. On top of that, the intervention of the head of the holy swords has caused a problem. If she had died, the sword would have passed to someone else. I have eliminated everyone who was unworthy of the sword before. Then he goes to open the drawer and take some medicine. But suddenly, Raphael enters the room. The moment the Lord sees him, he says, what is this? What happened to you? Take this medicine so it can heal you. Raphael strikes him with a powerful blow that cuts off his hand, then approaches him, places his foot in his mouth, raises his sword, and finishes him off. The next day, Shastil is sitting with Zagan, and she says to him, I can't believe the Lord was the one who wanted to kill me. The church has given me a chance to return once again, and I will do everything I can to make the world better. Raphael arrives, now healed and perfectly fine, and says to her, of course you will be able to do that. Shastil is shocked when she sees Raphael. Raphael says to her, I have become Zagan's servant. We go back in time when Raphael had arrived at Zagan's castle, and the castle's barrier detected his presence. Zagan and the others came out to see who was there, only to find Raphael collapsed on the ground with a serious injury. In order to help him, 4 asked him to become their servant, and of course, that would make him one of Zagan's assistants. Raphael had lost his arm, so 4 used her magic and created an arm for him. After that, Shastil leaves them and walks away. Zagan asks Barbatos to protect Shastil from her enemies. The next day, 4 is sitting and writing in her diary, saying that she is now staying in the castle and does not want to run away from it ever again. She says, I was happy that Zagan came and saved me, and even the person I thought had killed my father turned out to be a good person who saved me. He also respected my father, and he lost his arm because he was saving me. He is good at cooking too, and his food was delicious. One day, he made sweets for her, and those sweets had been prepared by a sorcerer. Zagan says to him, did you know that sorcerers cook? And they were all eating together. Then, Zagan, Nephilia, and 4 go to the city. When people see them, they start talking about them. Nephilia has become used to the city. Nephilia says to Zagan, come on, let's go to the clothing shop. Nephilia goes to the clothing shop and gives Manuela the sweets she has with her. Manuela says to her, clothes arrived, and I want you to try them on. Nephilia says to her, there is no time. We have to go. Zagan sees a musical device and becomes interested in it. Some sorcerers use this device, and the one who made it was a sorcerer. Manuela says to him, this device does not work. The street children are the ones who found it, and they brought it here to sell it. Zagan remembers that he used to be one of those street children, searching for anything he could sell. Zagan says to her, I will buy this device. He gives her a lot of money to take it. Manuela says to him, but this is far too much money, and this device does not work. Zagan says to her, I will be able to fix it. Then we move to Shastil and Barbatos, who are inside the castle, sitting and waiting for Zagan. Shastil says, I can't believe Raphael became Zagan's servant. Then says to Barbatos, it has been a long time since we last met. Zagan, Nephilia, and 4 return. They greet Shastil, and she tells them that the past period has been busy. The Lord's death was announced, so she has been handling office work. After that, they go to prepare food. 4 says to Shastil, do you know how to cook? Shastil says to her, yes, I know how to make a few things. And Zagan goes to repair the musical device. Barbatos came over and asked him, what are you doing? Zagan replied, I'm fixing the device. Barbados then said, "You need to do something, because Shastil is in danger." Zagan asked, "Is there still someone who wants to kill her?" Barbados answered, "She just can't stop making mistakes." He continued, "One time, she was sitting there working on some paperwork, and after she finally gathered everything together, she dropped it all over the floor. I had to use my magic to help her collect the papers. Then later, she crashed into the bookshelf, and it nearly fell on top of her. I managed to save her at the last second. That's just how she is. Either she's going to die, or I'm the one who's going to die." Zagan responded, "It doesn't matter if you're the one who dies." Then we move to Nefi and Shastil as they prepare the food. Nefi asks Shastil, "What did you make?" Shastil replies, "I made some soup. Here, give it a taste." Nefi takes a sip of the soup, and the moment she tastes it, she blurts out, "What is this?" Then she quickly goes off to hide because it tastes absolutely terrible. Nefi tells her, "Let's just set it aside for now and eat it later. Go sit down, I'll take care of making the food." After they finish, Zagan brings out the music device. He turns it on, and beautiful music begins to flow from it. Zagan tells them, "I can choose whatever music I want to listen to." Raphael then says, "I once visited a dance hall in a coastal city that had devices like these. People danced to the music there, but at that very moment I was attacked by sorcerers. After that, everyone gathers together to eat." Shastil is impressed by Nefi's cooking and says that the food tastes delicious. Barbados bursts out laughing when he hears that and says to her, "How can you talk about food when you don't know the first thing about it?" Shastil responds, "Speak to me more respectfully than that." Zagan says to him, "Looks like you've had too much to drink." Shastil asks, "And how would you know that?" Barbados replies, "I'm on a mission to keep an eye on you." Zagan immediately stabs him with a fork. Shastil says, "No one asked you to do that." Zagan replies, "I don't want you worrying about him. He's just had too much to drink." Then he thinks to himself, "I can't tell her that I sent him to watch over her." Nefi says to Shastil, "When you were poisoned, Barbados was the one who brought you here." Zagan tells Barbados to apologize. Barbados then drinks the soup and says, "It tastes good." Nefi looks at him and says, "But I didn't make any soup." Then Four says, "That's the soup Shastil made." Nefi asks him, "You actually liked it?" The next instant, Barbados collapses face first onto the plate. Shastil says, "So, was the soup I made really that bad?" After that, they leave, and Zagan goes to repair the music device. Nefi comes over and tells him, "I really enjoyed today." Then she asks him, "Why did you buy the music device?" Zagan replies, "I wanted you to listen to music with me." Nefi asks him, "Why do you become sad whenever you remember the past? But today you're not sad." Zagan says to her, "When I was living on the streets, I had no place to stay and no food to eat. And when I arrived at this castle, I never left it again. So I don't know whether the people I used to know are still out there or not. If I return this device to the streets, would that make you sad?" Nefi answers, "No." Afterward, he sits with her as they listen to one of the songs, and he says, "Come dance with me, just the two of us. But I don't know how to dance." Raphael arrives and tells him, "I'll teach you." Then he begins teaching them how to dance. The following day, Zagan took the device into the city and played music for the people. Then he and Nefi ran away from the city. And with that, Zagan's story comes to an end. If you'd like us to recap the second season of this story, let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any new videos. Until next time, see you in another video.